Hey everyone, this is Josh here with Invest with Matt. I hope you're doing well today. We got a pretty big day on our hands. We have Robinhood and Ethereum both in France discussing to get what it seems like together based on the news. Some pretty big announcement that's coming our way. So I rushed to try and get this out. This is part three of the perfect storm where we talk about setups, kind of the narratives around them, why they're important right now, uh, kind of the culmination of things that are coming together for these equities and I guess crypto that makes them an attractive buy here. Uh, I previously covered Robinhood was the first part. If you want to go watch it, you can see it on my YouTube, Invest with Matt, or you can find it on my X page, Invest with Matt, also. And then TSSI was the second one. That one was a little more AI narrative. Part of this one, part three, which will be for Ethereum, I covered kind of during the Robinhood discussion because it does play into their bull thesis as well. Um, so we'll go a little more in depth on Ethereum, but you'll see some similar themes to what you saw in the Robinhood video. If you did watch that, again, if you want to watch it, I'll put it in a link below. You can go back and check it out, but there is some overlap between that and the Ethereum bull thesis. So let's not belabor the point. We'll get into part three here, and I'll start with uh, the Ethereum inflows. Um, you know, what we're witnessing right now is probably one of the biggest shifts in financial, frameworks that we've seen in a very long time. I think blockchain is going to play an important role in that, and I think Ethereum sits at a pretty important spot to have a function within this rollout from traditional finance into blockchain finance. While everyone's kind of debating altcoin seasons, when they'll happen, if they'll happen, you have people like Tom Lee, who just this morning is buying a company to start up as a Bitcoin, not Bitcoin, an Ethereum treasury. Now, we've seen the Bitcoin treasury be popular for a while with MSTR, but SBET recently for Ethereum started a treasury. Now we have Tom Lee, who's probably one of the biggest bulls in the stock market, starting a treasury for Ethereum, which I think is pretty interesting. I mean, he's a legend. And I think he wants a part of this tokenized revolution that we're going to see. And it looks like he thinks that Ethereum is going to play a big role in this. So today we're deep diving into, the blockchain adoption, what it could mean for Ethereum, um, and why it could lead to a pretty attractive buy for Ethereum at these levels, and where it might go. So let's take a look first. These are the ETF inflows that you're seeing here. Post approval, you really saw a dip. But since October, like it's just been, a gradual increase until April, where it just what took a dramatic turn up. And I think that's kind of around the time where people started speculating. I know I did earlier in the year, and you can go back and see some write ups I've done on this. Um, that I thought these blockchains, some of these companies like Robinhood, Kraken already announced that they'll be using Solana to trade equities on. I thought we'd start to see some blockchain adoption, somewhere. And it looks like the first place that we're going to see this is with trading for stocks in ETFs, which is great because people really wanted a use case for a long time, and I think this is a good place to start. And there'll be many other use cases, and we can talk about those. But you can't really ignore this dramatic increase. I mean, if you look at the flows um, leading through June, there really has only been one day where there were outflows. Every other day for Ethereum ETFs, there have been inflows. We just had the second highest inflow day of 2025 with 240 million in a single day. BlackRock's ETHA led those ETFs with 160 million in inflows, followed by Fidelity's ETF that had 37 million in inflows. But here's what's really remarkable: 6 consecutive weeks of inflows after months of uncertainty seems to me to indicate like, yeah, something's going on here. That's 3.9 billion in total inflows since launch, and institutions are really starting to just ramp up on this now. If you compare that to Bitcoin's ETFs, they have 36 billion in the first year. You might think Ethereum is lagging, But there's a difference. Bitcoin is kind of the digital gold. Ethereum is the digital infrastructure for the what I think will be the entire financial system of the future. And it won't just be Bitcoin. I think there'll be multiple chains. But I think right now they are one of the most ready to kind of help support this transition. Chris Ryan of Digital Galaxy, I think he put it perfectly when he said, with increasing acceptance of crypto on Wall Street, especially as a means of payments and remittances, investors are really drawn to these ETFs. The utility story is just starting, and I think that's what we're seeing here with these inflows. So that's really all I have to say about that portion of it. Let's look at Tom Lee and like what he might be thinking of like strategically. And Tom, like, here's kind of just an overview of what he said. So, you know, speaking of institutional adoption, with Wall Street's probably one of the most popular analysts right now taking this on. He didn't just endorse Ethereum; you know, he's becoming a chairman of Bitmine, which is an Bitmine Emerging Technologies, to lead a $250 million Ethereum treasury strategy. This is the MicroStrategy playbook, yes. But he stated that, we will monitor the value of Ether held per company share as a key performance metric, similar to Bitcoin per share metrics. So it's going to kind of follow the same lines as MicroStrategy. Other recent statements that he believes, this vision goes beyond corporate treasuries. Stable coins are probably crypto's most disruptive force right now. And a lot of people are talking about them. A lot of people are trying to roll out stable coins. It looks like maybe Robinhood and Ethereum will have some sort of stable coin, um, agreement. I don't know. We'll see today. We'll find out more when they talk at 11 a.m., which is in an hour and 20 minutes. I'm really rushing to get this out. And guess where do most stable coins live? On Ethereum. With 250 billion in stable coins, and that market they think could hit 2 trillion. Ethereum already generates 30% of its network fees from stable coins alone. Least prediction is Ethereum is going to hit 5 to 6,000 in 2025, which I think so too, especially if we get an alt season. It'll see all time highs again. And this will be driven too, not just by retail at this point, but by institutional confidence. We have that now, and you can see that with these companies like Bitmine that are starting to suck up some of the liquidity, similar to what MicroStrategy has done in the past. So we can talk about the utility unlock here and what's about to happen. Um, this is kind of the real world asset revolution. Not just, I already talked about stocks and equities, but also real estate and like beyond real estate. I mean, think, you know, any kind of valuable that has an assigned monetary amounts, think Pokemon cards, or I don't know, people have talked about like selling a share of like a classic car or something like that, where people can buy shares of that as a tokenized asset. It's just different ways to access liquidity that you traditionally wouldn't be able to access. Like the one that comes to mind for most people is your home, right? If I can sell a portion of equity in my home to get the value out and use that money for something, in a much quicker manner than right now, like having to refinance is kind of a hassle. I know. I just did it. It took like 2 months because of a whole bunch of questions they had because we did renovations. Like being able to access that liquidity quickly through some sort of blockchain market would be amazing, I think, for a lot of people. Um, but yeah, this is where I think things get explosive for Ethereum and other blockchains. Um, you know, it's pretty much here, this real world tokenization idea. And I think that's where we'll start with Robinhood today and with Kraken previously, with equities. They're looking at $16 trillion in market opportunity by 2030 if you're looking at real estate alone. And they're projected to reach 4 trillion in tokenized value by 2035, extrapolating out based on the current markets that we have. Right now, there's already 10.2 billion in tokenized real world assets across 79 DeFi platforms, and Ethereum commands over half of that. I think it's 55% of the 250 billion. BlackRock also has a fund on Ethereum that has scaled to over 2.5 billion in assets. But let's talk about specifics um, and what's being tokenized. So, real estate platforms like Realty or Proppy are tokenizing everything from residential properties to commercial properties. Um, there's a 10 million property. You can divide that, like I said, up into sections of like 10,000 tokens, and you can have, them be worth $1,000 each. And, you can make luxury real estate accessible to retail investors if you wanted to like buy a property, but you can't buy the whole thing. Maybe you and 30 other people go in and buy 30,000 tokens that are worth $1,000 each to get a portion of that. Mortgages and HELOCs, Figure Technologies has actually originated over 13 billion blockchain based HELOCs, which is crazy. Like, I didn't know people were already doing this. Um, it cuts costs by over $850 per $100,000 on the mortgage. Um, Liquidify reduced MBS reporting time from 55 days to 30 minutes on blockchain. So this is what I was talking about. Um, Being able to like go from 2 or 3 weeks to like damn near instantly, and we were talking about 30 minutes. If you could access you know, the equity in your home in less than a day, like this is the kind of, you know, changes that blockchain will be able to enable. Like this isn't going to happen without it. Um, According to Deloitte, 12% of real estate firms globally have already implemented tokenization standards. So they're kind of preparing for this, with another 46% of them piloting it. So people are ready. Like it isn't something that's going to be 5 years down the road. It's going to probably happen now that Trump and the administration has really ramped up deregulating this space and giving them the leeway to like make some of these really big transitions. It's going to happen soon. It's not really an experiment. Like half of people were trying this. It's going to be production ready infrastructure in the near term, in my opinion. And I think that's why Tom Lee's getting so bulled up on it. He's seeing this too. Hood and traditional finance integration, like I talked about that in the Hood video, so I don't really want to go into it too in depth. But just imagine, I'll touch on it again. Robinhood's using Ethereum as this blockchain infrastructure for equities trading. Settlement speed is like instant for this. 24/7 markets, would trade like crypto. Like you'd be able to trade Apple on the weekends. You'd be able to access that, that equity. There would be liquidity for it when you need it. You're not having to wait on this during the week. You can do fractional ownership, which you can already do. But imagine like fractional ownership of Berkshire. I know they have Berk A and Berk B, but that's an example. Smart contract automation. I think this is a pretty big one. Dividend payments, stock splits, all this stuff could be put on smart contracts. It would reduce operational costs probably by like billions annually. The regulatory environment where I talked about it is super favorable. Paul Atkins, the SEC chair. You got Mr. Boring at the CFTC. You got David Sachs. It's the crypto czar for Trump. They're clarifying the frameworks that are going to make this possible and make things a little bit easier for some of these companies to transition. Robinhood processes millions of transactions daily. When that goes to Ethereum, and that's just Robinhood. Like I've talked about this, and I think I posted it on Tanner's X on a post he had about potentially having Robinhood and Ethereum team up. If you think about that, not just for Robinhood, but if you think on like a larger scale, and you look back, we already talked about real world assets, those would all be Ethereum transactions. And then if you add on like the transactions that occur daily on the NYSE or MX or any of these other exchanges, if they're being processed on Ethereum blockchain, you don't have to capture the full market. You can just capture a small percentage of this could be occurring on Ethereum, and it would have a huge impact. Because over the course of the year, we're talking about like, I don't know, tens of billions of transactions. And to that point, Ethereum has a burn mechanism. And even if you don't, They may use layer two like Arbitrum, but I still think the benefits won't be as dramatic as if they were using layer one, but Ethereum will still benefit from this. Um, Ethereum's EIP 1559 burn mechanism destroys Ethereum with every transaction. So that's kind of what I'm getting to here. More activity means more burn, which means less supply. Um, since the merge, 1,200 ETH have been burned from blob fees alone, with most occurring like recently. During the peak layer two activity, blob fees have exceeded base Ethereum fees. Now imagine scaling to traditional finance, like if they fully adopt Ethereum, even if only 10% of finance uses Ethereum's blockchain. That's still billions in trades, trillions in property transactions. Corporate bond settlements could go onto this too. That's massive institutional flows. Stablecoin payments, there's 2 trillion market potential there. And like I said, 55% of all stablecoins, or over half of stablecoins, are on Ethereum. Um, Conservative estimates, I would put around 10 to 50x more burn on Ethereum annually at the current levels. Combined with staking potential, like US, you can't really stake Ethereum on Robinhood or these other brokerages. Um, that's going to reduce liquidity, right? Because people are going to get the staking rewards. They're just going to lock up their Ethereum because they're just holding it anyway. So why not get some money back on while you're holding it, kind of like a treasury? You could see Ethereum become severely deflationary, like especially if it gets mass adoption as the blockchain of choice. Recent data shows that brief deflationary periods when layer two actively spikes scale true to traditional finance integration, and supply shocks will eventually become inevitable for Ethereum. But why layer two scaling and speed, Arbitrum, and layer two graphics, you know, Ethereum can't handle uh, the massive scale alone. But thanks to layer twos, it can. Arbitrum, and this might be part of the announcement today too. I don't know. We'll see. But Arbitrum already processes 1.89 billion in total transactions, and I can't talk. Regularly exceeds Ethereum in daily transaction volume. Layer twos now process 5x more transactions than Ethereum's base chain. Um, Speed and cost benefits. Arbitrum transactions are 14 cents on average. Ethereum at 75 cents, so it's kind of expensive. Settlement time is near instant. The base coins layer two, Coinbase is layer two, has exploded to 400,000 daily transactions in March to over 7 million currently. So that's a lot. Its DEX volume is only surpassed by Ethereum and Solana. Infrastructure ready for TradFi. GMX and Arbitrum earned more fees than Ethereum during peak weeks. Total value locked, 1.85 billion on Arbitrum alone. Enterprise solutions. Swift is testing cross network transfers for major banks. So you think banking is probably also going to move in this direction. When Robinhood and traditional finance adopt this infrastructure, layer twos will provide that speed and efficiency that's needed for high frequency trading and institutional volume. And again, that's why I think you're seeing this in the inflows and the activity. Like the price hasn't necessarily shown this migration, but I think when it happens, it'll happen slowly and then all at once. And you'll see a big spike in Ethereum. And people should realize this. I don't know why it's not hasn't moved the price to this point. It really doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, a little more on staking. Ethereum staking, industry experts expect, it'll probably occur soon because of the ETFs and Trump-friendly administration will allow it. Currently, validators earn like 4% ish annual rewards, which is more or less with treasuries. But people are expecting rate cuts soon. I think if the treasuries get down to like 3% or under 3% again, which I think they will within the next 2 years, then Ethereum staking becomes way more attractive than putting your money into treasuries. And that'll just lock up a lot of liquidity if people do move to that. I mean, passive income rewards without selling the assets really nice. You can't do that with everything. It's predictable for your portfolio management. I think institutions will really like that when setting up people's retirement, accounts. Like I think Ethereum could be a big player on just like a stable thing that's in everyone's portfolio that advisors are going to add in. Um, there's staking pools too. You can get optimized rewards. Bitmain strategy that is, just the beginning kind of for companies that are looking to get past just a Bitcoin treasury. Already talked about SharpLink, which is SBET. And that's another Ether strategy that just kind of popped up in May of this year. When you start seeing more of these major corporations um, staking billions in Ethereum for yield generation, you're looking at supply chain crunch for Ethereum that could dwarf previous cycles. So, in conclusion, I know I've rambled on a bit, but let's kind of just bring it together into like one consolidated thesis. You have institutional ETF inflows. You can see those here. They're accelerating. You have people like Tom Lee, who has a very good reputation, and I don't think wants to sully his name by something he doesn't actually believe in. Um, Building Ethereum treasuries. You have $16 trillion in real world assets, choosing Ethereum infrastructure. You got traditional finance adoption becoming pretty much inevitable at this point. Burn mechanism is going to amplify the massive transaction volume. Layer 2 scaling is ready for enterprise adoption. Staking yields are going to be super attractive for institutional capital. Um, Tom Lee was predicting 5 to 6,000 in 2025. It doesn't really look crazy when you think about all of these things. You think about the supply reduction, the burns, the staking, for demand explosion for real world asset tokenization. You'll get institutional FOMO and the infrastructure. As the infrastructure proves itself, you have these early adopters like Robinhood that are going to use this for equity trading or whatever. And the more people get comfortable with it, the more people are going to want to use it. And I think it'll become like the financial layer of the internet. The question isn't whether it happens, in my opinion, it's how fast. With 240 million in ETF inflow days becoming normal and trillion-dollar asset classes moving on chain, Ethereum isn't really just scaling. It's becoming, along with other blockchains, it's becoming the new financial backbone, the backbone of the financial system. Institutional money is already there. The technology, I think, is more or less ready. The regulatory environment is shifting to be more favorable for it. All that's left is really just the execution. Um, and I don't think Ethereum's ever been better positioned than it is right now. We'll see today what Robinhood says. I'm pretty excited about it. I think everyone else should be too, because it's not really just about Robinhood and Ethereum. This is about how finances, how the financial system is going to work for the next 50, 100 years. I don't know, until something else better comes along. This is where we're obviously moving towards. And I think this is a big moment. Today's going to be a big moment. So thanks for watching, everyone. If this analysis helped you understand, why Ethereum could dominate the next cycle, please hit the like button, subscribe. I hate saying that. It always sounds so cringy. But I think this revolution is going to happen one way or another. It's just a matter of time. Again, you can follow me on X, Invest with Meh. I'm on YouTube, Invest with Meh. I'm on Substack, Invest with Meh. Feel free to reach out, DM me if you have any questions. I'm pretty open book. Appreciate your time today. Everyone have a good day. Peace.